My name's Dana Smith. Between Breath and Air is a podcast exploring holistic wellness in our modern world. I've been exploring the intersections of physical and mental health, creativity, spirituality, and social responsibility in the realms of wellness for the past decade of my dual careers as a massage therapist and life coach. And this podcast is an extension of that exploration. Join me and my guests as we look closely at the many facets of embodying whole human wellness in this achingly complex world. Today, I get to speak with Eric Purves. Among many things, he's a massage therapist and a pain management educator. Early in his career as an RMT, Eric saw a lot of people who were suffering with terrible pain, and it just didn't make much sense. This was further emphasized when his wife experienced a traumatic injury, and her pain seemed to keep getting worse despite surgeries, injections, and a whole wealth of different interventions. Through these experiences, he realized that his knowledge on pain was incomplete. So he jumped into the deep end of pain research and realized that how massage therapists were educated and the culture of not just this profession, but all the musculoskeletal therapy professions was totally inadequate when it came to pain management. See, Eric wants massage therapy to realize its true ability to be leaders in the management of pain. But in order to do that, there needs to be a move away from the unhelpful and, in many cases, completely wrong narratives about what massage therapy does and how it exerts its effects. This is a big task and one which needs to be supported by all stakeholders. It must begin with the creation of a new curriculum that's based on the most current research evidence. Eric's been teaching continuing education courses for healthcare providers since 2015 after being inspired with what he learned at the San Diego Pain Summit. And this led him to completing a master's in rehabilitation science at UBC. During his graduate work, he joined Pain BC's education faculty, and this led him to forming his own education company, where he travels the world teaching various courses on pain management, which is how I've had the fortune of getting to know him. What I love about Eric is that he brings to his learning environments a felt sense of collaboration, curiosity, and continued learning. He models what our profession needs to embody as we step into this new paradigm of research-backed, patient-centered care. We need to show up for each other as a cohesive group of practitioners so we can break down the siloed outlooks of competing treatment approaches and modalities that slows our development as a profession. The work he's doing is bridge building and so incredibly important. So today I'm talking to him from his home office in Victoria, British Columbia. So welcome, Eric. I am so glad you're here.
Well, thank you. I'm very happy to be here too. That was a lovely introduction. It's always funny to hear what other people have to say about you. So thank you.
Oh, of course. Thanks for your work. I'm really happy you're here and we're going to talk about some cool things. There's such a breadth of knowledge that you bring here, and we're just going to skim the surface of a couple of different topics. So what I'm interested in from my dual outlooks of working with people in the massage therapy setting as well as in the coaching professions is people's healing and development processes. And I'm often trying to explain to people how their psychological experience of pain, be it emotional pain, can be likened to physical pain. And I wonder from your perspective, given your very strong background in your musculoskeletal therapies, what's your take on how pain is both a sensory and an emotional experience?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things when we talk about pain is there is a definition for pain, and I'll give that to you in a second. But I think we often, equate pain to being either a psychological, emotional pain, like the loss of a loved one or the loss of something in life or something happens is painful. And we use the word pain to describe that. But then we also have pain that we would see in the massage therapy world primarily, which is going to be like some musculoskeletal kind of sensory aspect of pain. And I would say that when we're looking at pain, by definition, it's an unpleasant sensory and emotional experience. So it's distressing, it's uncomfortable, it's something that people don't want, and it's unique to each person. And there could be potential damage to tissue, or there could be actual damage to tissue, right? The definition says something about it's a distressing sensory and emotional experience associated with or resembling that associated with actual or potential tissue damage. Something like that. I I'm probably missing a few words there. So by definition, it says there is an emotional component. So when we say there's a sensory component to pain, the way I understand that is it's like we feel pain in a body part. We feel a pain in part of our body. But the emotional aspect is it's the kind of like the meaning that's assigned to it, or the how does that sensory experience of pain impact your feelings? Because emotion is feelings, right? If we look at the definition, emotional refers to a feeling. So when we're looking at this, I think it's impossible really to separate the two, right? So pain is a unique subjective experience. Everybody has pain, and there's going to be an emotional component, and there's probably going to be some sensory component. Do you need to have both at the same time? Well, I would say it's almost impossible not to, because if your pain is, say, emotional from, let's say, the loss of something that's meaningful, important to you, you're going to feel that somewhere else in your body. You're going to have a sensation somewhere else in your body. And if you've had some traumatic injury, or you're suffering with chronic pain or some type of systemic pain condition, and you experience pain, let's say, in your low back, well, you're going to have some feelings about that too. So the two terms are intimately related to each other.
They're linked even by the word feeling, right? Because we talk about our emotions as feelings. And you're talking about sensory impulses, which we also call a feeling, which is really interesting that, we're using the same language for what are considering two separate things. And I often am troubled in our profession because it's like we really aren't prepared to support people in an emotional way, very formally. And of course we do. And it becomes a little tricky in how we manage that space, because I don't feel like we're prepared in our foundational trainings on how to create those bridges and a really cohesive, holistic environment for people to do lots of levels of healing on all these feelings from all these different components of themselves.
I 100% agree with you. I strongly feel that our education is inadequate to deal with people. There's a lot of great therapists out there, and I never mean to say that I never mean to have these conversations and try and throw anybody under the bus or something negative about them. But I would say that where the background from which we come from to enter into the profession is really quite inadequate in order to deal with the complexity of pain and people's experiences. We very much learn different techniques and different modalities with different stories behind them, and we learn to kind of recognize patterns. When you see this is what you apply, and it's a very common kind of recipe type approach. There might be some changes in some schools with some instructors, but I would say if we look at the averages, that very structural modality based approach is what we learn. But when we're dealing with people that come to see us and they hurt, they're suffering, unless you have explored other education or training or have a background in that stuff, I would say most of us are completely inadequate at how to not screw that up.
Yeah. The somato-emotional connection really was skipped over. And not to say that the foundational massage therapy training isn't a solid foundation. Like, it's a very solid foundation, but it is just a foundation. And I'm glad there's educators out there like yourself that we're able to loop in with and be able to deepen our practices so that we can support people in greater, wider, deeper ways.
That's the hope, right? And I think I would just say that it's incomplete. I guess our foundational training is incomplete. We learn the basics, but it's hard when you're out there going from what you learn in school to what the real world looks like. It's not as easy. I mean, I remember school clinic, many years ago. 20 years ago was when I started massage school. I don't know where the time goes, but and then you start doing the clinic, and then what you go in the real world and you start to see people that are very different from what presents in the clinic, and you think, holy cow, I don't know what the hell is going on. I don't know what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. I thought I did, but now nothing makes sense.
The existential
which you kind of alluded
crisis.
to in the introduction. It kind of got my brain spinning many years ago, trying to think that my foundations were okay to stop me from causing damage, but they weren't good enough to help people as much as I should.
Yeah, I'd love to see a renaissance of the professions as we become much more skilled and adapt and be able to hold a greater capacity of care for people. We're out there. There's people out there, but
Oh yeah.
there's definitely it might be hard to find them weeded out of those bios online when you're searching for a new massage therapist.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of great therapists out there, and I think it's just when we
Yeah.
talk about these things, it's important to have these conversations, because if you don't
Truly.
question things that aren't ideal, or if you don't question things that are, need to be addressed, then I think you end up missing. People, everyone thinks, oh, we're fine, everything's okay. No, the one thing in the world that's constant is change. So we should be okay. We should be happy to change and to explore what that might look like for our profession.
Absolutely. Yeah, that complacency and wanting to just kind of dig your heels in is very dangerous.
Yes.
Very dangerous. So, given that we were just talking about that connection between the sensory and emotional experience, how can understanding this affect people's outcomes?
Yeah, and that's the thing that oftentimes these conversations go down these kind of philosophical debates, and I think we just got to, if we really look at what matters most, it's the person that comes into your treatment room, that comes to your clinic. Why does this matter to them? And I would say that it does matter a lot, because the way a clinician thinks is going to impact the way they communicate. It's going to impact the expectations that they have about what is happening, what they're able to provide. And it also, that then goes on to the patient, client, the person that's coming to seek your care, is going to be potentially be given information or misinformation that might not be helpful. Now, I would say a lot of the times we can have these kind of academic debates and conversations about, the pain definitions, where we can talk about person-centered or biopsychosocial, and we can have these debates, which I think are in these conversations, which are really important. But we have to always think, how is this applicable to the person that comes to see me for help? And I would say the biggest thing, though, is when we're thinking, let's say, person-centered or biopsychosocially. I think those things are both kind of the same, and that's for a different conversation. But let's look at the whole person. And what you see is that traditionally we're looking at just the bio. We're looking at some pathoanatomical type, some type of structural thing to fix. We're looking for some dysfunction that's causative of their pain. And we see this all the time, right? The root cause, or this is the reason why you hurt. And then interventions are, clinician-centered to fix that thing. Now, the problem is that a lot of cases of pain, and I would say vast majority of people that have been in pain for a long time, we don't know why they hurt. And there is no magic button to push that's going to make them feel better. So if we think about pain from moving from this pathoanatomical thing and realizing that has a role, but thinking more big picture, we might realize we might be missing about, like, how can we best support this person right here? What does this person need today? Maybe they live with fibromyalgia, or maybe they've had pain, and they've been living with pain for 20, 30 years, and maybe it's not going to go away. So I can't fix it, but I can maybe make their experience of pain much more comfortable. And then maybe I can be here to deliver something that works for them. So when we move or shift our focus from fix it to facilitating kind of a wellness environment for the person, I think it's actually really empowering for us as massage therapists, because it gives us more creativity and more flexibility in what we do. We're not stuck by the confines of, oh, I identify by this 3-letter acronym and this is how I treat everybody, which is a thing. A lot of people do that. We're like, no, okay, I have different techniques, different tools at my disposal. What do you want today? Okay, well, let's have a conversation. Let's figure out what's going to work best for you, and give them some realistic information if they want it, and try and deliver something that's patient-centered to them, not you dictating, I'm going to do this thing to you. That's a big shift.
That's a huge shift. Yeah, and encouraging
So I think
people...
it's better for outcomes. Bias,
right?
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I've seen the effects in my clinical practice too of treating people, meeting them where they're at, and being responsive to what a person is responsive to. I'm not going to force any treatment techniques or approaches on a person. I'm always checking for, a level of receptivity in that space. And one thing I'm always kind of prodding, like testing, poking with my little fingers, is like, ooh, are you willing to look at how you're looking at this? Because a lot of people find a lot of comfort in the familiarity of the explanation of their pain. And whether or not it helps them, they find comfort in that definition and that little box that it sits in. And I love opening the door for people to look at it and go, I wonder what a conversation with your body might look like if it looked a different way. What if we looked at this as being in a place where you could interpret the sensations from your body in a new way? What if, we kind of just put that whole medical model down for a second, and those justifications and those logical reasons as to why you experience this way, and you just experience what you're experiencing in this hour that we're here together and see what happens. And most of the time people come to massage because it feels good. And as I'm sure you can speak to, feeling good helps you cope with not feeling good.
Yeah. I mean, that's so brilliantly said there. I love that so much, Dana. I would say that the goal really should always be to try and make people feel good. And I always joke in, my courses on things, I always use the term TPN, which means just touch people nicely. I always joke about it being like the simplistic approach. And what that means is it doesn't mean light touch all the time. It doesn't mean you're not doing something that the patient doesn't want. It just means that you're finding an interaction with them that they experience as being good, and it feels good. And so if someone lives with a lot of pain and they come see us for an hour and we're part of their self-management strategy, and we've been open and honest about what we can and can't do, and they give you informed consent about, yeah, okay, like, that's fine. I'll come every week or two or month or whatever. And, I'm doing these other things when you're not here, and you're not making false promises. Like, I'm going to fix you. You come in, I'm going to realign and recorrect, and I'm going to here to kind of guide you and be your support for you as you go on your journey. Great. And so you're becoming more of a supportive self-management advocate, working with the person based on their needs, goals, wants, expectations, but you're not selling them false. I know my clinical practice, I saw that all the time from other people. They would come in with they'd have this belief about what was going on with them. That'd been a well-meaning healthcare provider put that on them, and they just ended up spending all their time and money looking for this fix. But then, like you said, when you open up a door to having a conversation with them and their body and what they're going through, and if they're open to it and they can shift into like, oh, okay, like this is more about management. I don't need to keep chasing all these people to find something that works because I've seen 100 people on it, so I'm getting the same results. Then usually, I mean, I can't say always, you'll see that people start to live better, despite being in pain, and their pain might become more manageable rather than this constant, circle of just searching, suffering. Well, now they suffer, but maybe they have a different understanding about what their pain is, and they have a different tools that we've been able to help them explore and find that might help them live better, live well.
Yeah, absolutely. I see my role as a facilitator. You mentioned that term earlier. It's like I facilitate people on their journey as they develop the practices to self-regulate themselves. Sometimes you can go there yourself, but you have to develop the skills. And when we get into that deep state of relaxation, when we're in a facilitated, body experience, like in a massage room, for instance, it's helpful because somebody else is helping you go there. So there's two people helping one person get into a state of being. And I always remind people that they have access to that state of being because it's just a state of being. And it's just a matter of them remembering the pathway back to this place of being fully resourced, centered, in this deep state of rest and digest and rejuvenate, right? And they forget. And I love reminding people that, it's something that they can have access to. And it's just a matter of developing a practice of being able to make that shift within themselves so that they can ultimately be independent and empowered themselves. Because I'd rather people didn't come to massage, because they're feeling so good that they, are able to do that for themselves. But if I can be a helpful facilitator in that journey, I'm more than willing.
Oh, that's so well said. I always felt so happy when I would run into a patient somewhere who I hadn't seen in a long time, and they would like be apologetic, like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I haven't been in to see you. I've been feeling so great." I'm like, "Good, I'm so happy to hear that."
Yeah.
I mean, and always, inside you always, your initial reaction is like, "Yes, I did something good," but you're like, "No, you did something good." You did this. I was just here, like you said, to facilitate it. So
It's great when you can get a clinician to get out of the space, right? And like really put the focus on being on the patient, right? Like that
yeah,
really is what patient-centered care is.
100%. Yeah.
So what would you recommend for, like, let's just kind of, we've focused a little bit more on the clinical practice and from a patient or a practitioner perspective. But if there's somebody listening who is experiencing persistent pain or going through a tough time being in their body right now, are there any practices that you can recommend that may help make living easier for them?
Yes. Anything and everything. And this is what's so great with this is that it's kind of whatever you want to do, whatever works for you. And this is what's so great about this is that there's no magic button, there's no magic practice that is works better than the other, because every human is different and everyone's experience of pain is so different. So, we've talked about this before, I think you and I, is that I like the idea of the circuits that fire together, wire together, which means that kind of the more we do things, the better we become at them. So, we're not using this to say that it's going to fix your pain, because that would be wrong and unhelpful to put that idea in people's heads. But I always felt that in my clinical practice that I was like, if you find things, what are the things that you like to do? What are the things you want to do? What things make you feel better? And that could be anything. It could be walking. It could be, going for coffee with your friends. It could be pushing your kids in the stroller around the block. It could be, going and spending more time with your spouse or your friends. Or it could be yoga. It could be Pilates. It could be going for massage. It could be meditation. It could be hot showers, whatever it might be. Whatever things are, and it's more than one. It's like usually a bunch of things that people would want to incorporate into their life, is if it feels good and it helps, then keep doing it. Because the more you do it, the more likely it's going to be to become a habit. And that's going to be something you're going to take into your kind of daily, weekly life. And that's going to become part of your kind of your self-management plan. So we say circuits fire together, wire together, meaning not that you're going to change their pain, but you can start to incorporate good habits that are created by you. And you just keep doing these things to be part of your self-management plan. And you're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days. But for the goal is to just explore and try different things. And what works one day might not work the next day, and that's okay.
That's why you have a bunch of things in your back pocket
to pull
upon. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if we look at the literature, it's all very non-specific. It's meaningful and valued activities is the terms you see often. So what's meaningful and valuable to you is different from everybody. So that's the target, I guess, that you want to kind of move towards. Yeah.
So I often frame it as when I'm inviting somebody to be in relationship with their uncomfortable body sensations in new ways, I'm like, try to point out that their brain is in the habit of perceiving a lot of pain. And if they create the opportunity to perceive other sensations other than pain, then their awareness of other sensations can increase. Is there any flaw in explaining it that way, Eric?
Well, this comes into one of those debates about like the brain's role in pain. And there's a whole school of thought and researchers that are the pain is an output of the brain and this kind of thing. And, and I've taught that before. And I still talk about that because I think there's some stuff in there that's useful. But then there's other people too that are like, no, pain is entirely the result of, noxious stimuli somewhere in your body. And when you have a conscious awareness of that, both these explanations talk about consciousness and awareness of what is happening from that sensory and emotional aspect of your body. So I'd say in some ways, there's more overlap with those ideas than not. I would say the only thing that where I've kind of shifted my thinking a little bit over the last couple of years is that when we're talking to people about pain, they have to want to know about it. Because otherwise it comes into this pain-splaining thing where we're just giving them some neurophysiology and they're going to hear, oh, this is all in my head. Yeah, I'm making it up. If I just change my thoughts, then my pain's going to go away. So then it becomes, rather than you trying to fix a tissue, you're trying to fix a thought process, which might be maladaptive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the flaw, I would say, is not necessarily in the idea about, helping people change how they think and feel, because I think that can be really valuable for the management aspect. I would say the flaw could be in how is that perceived by the person.
Yes.
And I wouldn't say that's their flaw,
Mm-hmm.
because that's how they hear it, that's how they experience it. But I would say the flaw would be in, are you giving them information that they are then taking not the intended message from? So I think there's a very fine balance that we need to have with that. And I know from my own successes and failures, definitely more failures than successes, was I used to just want to tell everybody that. I would want to pain explain to people, and then, some would buy in and some would not, and they would hate me because they would get the wrong message, and I just sucked at doing it. So I stopped doing it to everybody and just would say, hey, like, do you want to hear a different story of something that might be happening? And we know that, how we think and feel and behave about our pain can influence it. If we're really worried about our back, if we're really scared about it, if we think that every time we bend or move or do something, we're causing more tissue damage, more harm. We might be increasing the pain, but we're not doing more damage necessarily. So that can be a useful way to say, okay, if we can influence these thoughts in a way to make them more adaptive, we're looking to change behaviors. Coaching is all about changing behaviors, right?
Mm-hmm.
And influencing behaviors. So if we can do that in a way that is meaningful to the person, I think that is really important. The key thing though is we need to make sure that we ask people, once we've done or had those conversations, to repeat it back to us. So that way they're not leaving with like, oh my God, I saw Eric, I saw Dana. They told me that all the pain's in my head, and no, it's not what I said, but that might be how it came across.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That was a long answer. I don't know if I answered. That was a long-winded talk. I don't know if I answered your question or not.
I think you did. And this is no easy topic. So
No. Talk forever about this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And we ought to keep talking. What do you wish practitioners would adopt as practices?
Oh, that's a big question. Are you talking in terms of like how do they, like in their clinical practice, what do they do?
Yeah,
Or in their
maybe
personal practice?
Yeah, as clinicians, what do you feel would be most helpful for them to adopt as practices?
Yeah, so this is something that I think is when you go into academia, a lot, like through graduate work and stuff, there's so much emphasis is on reflective practice. It's really essential to develop critical thinking skills, and it's all really about asking yourself questions about like, why and how do I think this way? Why do I do what I do? Where does my knowledge come from? What are my biases? Where do these biases come from? In a clinical context, you could, after an intervention or interaction with somebody, you could say things like, what did I learn from this situation? What went well, what went poorly? Where is my knowledge lacking? What other knowledge and experiences and things do I need to learn more about this type of presentation or this specific population? So it really comes down to us as clinicians to really adopt that and say, hey, like there's things I don't know, and I want to learn more about them, and to really challenge your thinking and to accept that, like, I have biases. We all do. We're all human. We're all going to have them, and to recognize those, and how do those biases influence your clinical interactions? What are you doing with people, and why? Are you just recognizing patterns and just doing the same thing? Or are you, did you take a course recently from somebody that you really found magnetic and exciting, and you're just like, I'm going to practice like this person here? Are you taking that information and applying it to everybody you see? So I would say that's one thing I would love for us to do as a profession, but it's not introduced to us in clinical or in our base education. And it's probably not introduced to a lot of therapists, right? It's something that you have to kind of pursue on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you did that, you would see that if people actually sat down and wrote down those questions I said, and asked themselves those questions, and were really honest about it, you would realize some kind of gaps in your thinking that might not be the most impactful. And what I find this does is it really opens up your mind to being more receptive of new information.
Yeah.
Because when you realize, hey, I don't know everything. Actually, I don't know much at all. And that's okay, because I'm willing to learn.
Yeah.
And this goes kind of back to what we were talking about at the beginning, about the kind of the focus on these structural, pathoanatomical, tissue-based modality empire stuff. You're not, if you are in that and you're getting results with your people, great. No one's ever disputing your results, but you can almost guarantee that your knowledge that you're using is extremely narrow, because you are thinking within this very specific mindset rather than reflecting on a bigger picture of information that's out there.
Yeah. You can see how that would impact not only the longevity of a clinician's career and staying engaged throughout, as well as the breadth of impact that they could have with the people that they work with. There's loads of benefits in reflective practice. Huge.
Yeah, and to be in my own fairness, like I didn't start doing it until I went to graduate school, and we had to do it. And then I thought, this sucks. But then you start to realize how valuable it is, because it's hard. It's hard to admit that you don't know everything. It's hard to admit that you made mistakes, and that's okay. Because I coach sports, I coach soccer, and I always tell the kids, I'm like, made a mistake. It's a learning moment. Yeah. You know that to be better next time when that situation arises. That's okay.
The easy learning is never the stuff that really sticks. All those times you get really burned. Those are the lessons that stick.
Oh, for sure. The hard lessons are the ones that you always remember.
Yeah. So make more mistakes so you can learn more, people.
Yeah. You know what? And if you don't try, then you're not going to make mistakes, right? If you stay in your safe little bubble.
Yeah.
It's safe, but I don't know if you're realizing your potential.
Mm-hmm. I suppose some people don't care to, and that's okay too, as long as they're not causing harm.
Yeah, and you know what? And I've been at this for so many years now, over 8 years, and in terms of like teaching and writing and advocating stuff, and I've realized that a lot of people don't care, but that's fine. If you don't care, you don't care. I'm not going to try and inform. I'm not going to try and change your mind if you're not open to it. But there's enough people that do care, and those are the people that you kind of want to interact with and influence as much as you can, because they want to learn. People have already got their minds closed off. They're just, I'm doing my thing, going to work these days. This is what I do. I don't care. I'm not doing any harm. Then who are we to argue, right? Patient-centered, person-centered care. We also could say, well, when we're, that would be the same idea with a clinician, right? That would be person-centered for them. Like, you know what? I don't care what you have to say, Eric. I don't have to care it doesn't matter. That's fine. I'm not going to force I'm not going to change your mind then. Yeah,
that's just not a good use of your energy. Fan the flames of the people who are already sparked, right?
Yeah, I love that. That's such a great quote. That's great.
Oh, cool. So tell us a bit about what's next for you, Eric. I know you always have things up your sleeve. You're doing great work.
Yeah, I never have nothing going on. It's crazy. It seems that there's always new opportunities, and things are just always kind of falling in my lap. So I am still teaching courses. I don't have any scheduled for BC this year, because they did do kind of a hiatus on the Con Ed for a year. So I might do one near the end in the fall. But I'm doing all my teaching mostly either online, which will be available to people in BC if they want, or I'm actually doing a bunch kind of in the rest of Canada.
Mm-hmm. And who are the people who take your courses?
Who are they?
Yeah. Mainly
RMTs mostly.
Yeah.
RMTs mostly, but I've done stuff in the States where I've been able to teach courses at universities, which have been all physiotherapists, occupational therapists. Mm-hmm. But I would say 99% of the people that take my courses are RMTs. You do get some athletic therapists or fitness professionals, or I've done stuff too where I've had like yoga and Pilates professionals in there. So it's kind of anybody that works with humans is who I would happily have, because my courses aren't heavily hands-on stuff. I do more if they're in person, and there's a lot of RMTs there that want to like, can you talk about this stuff, but what's that look like in practice? Yeah, so I'm teaching quite a bit. I've got a full teaching schedule this year. I do have my own podcast, which I am launching soon. I've got a whole bunch of recordings. I need to edit them and upload them and stuff. So that's going to be called Purves Verses. So my last name, Verses.
Love it.
And then the focus of that podcast is going to be basically I want to just talk about different stories and different ideas and different concepts, which is the verses part. It was me kind of discussing and, not really necessarily always conflict, but just, having conversations about certain things. And so I'm going to be doing that through a series of topics.
Oh, I'm excited.
I'm excited too. It's good so far, but it's like, it's a lot of work getting these things up and going and all the back end stuff, right?
I know, right? The conversations are the fun part. And then there's the back end. But we'll be sure to put the link to it in the show notes so people can find it easily.
Please. Yeah.
And you're coaching soccer still. That's like your true love, isn't it? For other activities that you love to do, hey?
Yeah, if I could make a living doing that, that's where you would find me every day, would be out on the soccer field coaching. I love it. I played my whole life, and I've got two teenage daughters that play, and I've coached them for a lot of years, and we've had a lot of success and a lot of fun with them and the group of kids. So I love it. Today it's in Victoria. It's snowed, so I don't know if the fields will be open, but they might if it keeps warming up. So we'll see.
Oh, that's
if anyone ever wants to know what I'm doing, if they ever email me or message me and they on a weekend and I don't get back to them for a couple of days, it's usually because I'm on the soccer field.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's so great. Thanks so much for this juicy conversation, Eric. I feel like we skimmed the surface on barely anything, but that was really rich. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, dude. That was lovely. I really enjoyed that.
Awesome. Okay, more soon. Thanks for listening to this episode of Between Breath and Air. If you're keen to support my work, please like and subscribe to this podcast. And if you'd like to be the first to know about other stuff I'm up to, hop over to my website, danasmithwellness.com, and subscribe to my love letter so I can visit your inbox a couple of times per month. So until next time, let me ask you this. During this one wild and precious life, how will you use your time while your breath is not just air?